Market Prospects, delivering timely information and education to prairie farmers for over 30 years. Market Prospects is brought to you by the University of Saskatchewan's Department of Agricultural and Resource Economics and these sponsors. Log on to marketprospects.usask.ca to view past programs and for information on upcoming programs.
Well, this week we begin another series of Market Prospects interviews with a focus on adoption of soybeans in Saskatchewan. We're joined by Kelsey Richardson, Master of Science candidate in the Department of Agricultural and Resource Economics, University of Saskatchewan, and she's also a policy director with Sask Wheat. Great to have you on Farmgate.
Thank you for having me.
Right off the top then, you completed a thesis on soybean adoption here in Saskatchewan. So where do we stand with the crop in Saskatchewan and the prairies, and what are some of the barriers and drivers to its adoption here in Saskatchewan then?
So soybean acres have been increasing consistently across the prairies for the last several years. Manitoba is still where most of the production occurs, and they've been growing soybeans for a much longer time period also. Acres are predicted to increase again this year in Manitoba, up to 2.2 million acres. For Saskatchewan, acres were first reported in 2013. Last year, we grew 240,000 acres, and acres are projected to potentially triple for this year. So definitely a lot of interest currently in soybeans in the prairies. However, there are still some barriers out there to adoption that farmers identified through this research project. So the two main barriers that were talked about most frequently when I was interviewing farmers were the need for earlier maturing varieties still and varieties with better yield potential. So those two agronomic factors are still, concerns farmers have when they think about growing soybeans here.
So what was the key focus of your research? Who provided the support, and why were they interested in your work then?
So this research project was a part of the Soygen research project, which was the main funders were Genome Canada, Genome Quebec, and the Western Grains Research Foundation, but there was several other funding partners also. And the goal of our research was to identify barriers and drivers of soybean adoption in order to facilitate extension services, so the provision and designing of future extension services. So by, extension providers then could adequately address farmers' needs from the results of this research and interviews.
So based on your research, which farmers out there are adding soybeans to their rotations, and why might some farmers be hesitant on planting the crop?
So there are a variety of factors that would make soybeans attractive to farmers. So for some, it could be getting a disease break in their rotations if they're dealing with disease issues in other crops. For producers who are in areas that have seen increased precipitation over the last few growing seasons, soybeans can be attractive as they handle wet conditions better than peas or lentils do. And from most of the results too, what we can see in the survey, if farmers are dealing with underperforming crops in the rotation, then soybeans become more attractive, or they have more of an incentive to look at growing other crops, and soybeans can fill that void. For producers who are satisfied with the crops that they're growing, they have less of an incentive, obviously, to look at switching crops out. As far as individual factors that can play into this, size of the farm was found to be significant, so increasing acres was found to reduce the odds of adoption. So increasing farm size, you have less time, less labor available to help working through the adoption process. Also factors, looking at expected profitability of the crop, the perceptions farmers have around that, the perceived level of risk they had with soybeans also was found to be very important in the decision to become interested and eventually adopt.
So what roles can producer groups, government, researchers, and other stakeholders play in boosting the perception of soybeans and also, I guess, the growth of soybean production?
So all of those groups can play very important roles in providing extension services to farmers and providing information and support. So we did look at extension services also in this research and looking at if a lack of information or accurate information could be impeding adoption. And farmers reported that they were satisfied with the amount of information and support available to them currently. So we concluded that it seems like the extension services around soybeans are functioning pretty well right now in the province. Another important result to highlight around extension services is the role of on-farm trials. So we found on-farm trials to have a significant positive impact on the number of years growing soybeans. So from an extension perspective, it's really important to continue to provide those opportunities to farmers or provide resources for farmers to set up their own trials, as that's really a key learning activity in the adoption process.
So where do you see soybean production going in the near future?
I think we're going to see continued adoption in the near future. Like I said, there's lots of interest out there right now, and as we have more earlier maturing varieties released onto the market, more farmers might be more likely to try it. And you know, Soy Canada's released goals to have 6 million acres of soybeans in Western Canada in the next 10 years. So if we're going to hit that target, then we're definitely going to have to see increased adoption moving forward.
And of course, the weather will play a big role in what happens here, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah. So if we turn dry for a couple more years, or if there's an early frost one year, that might deter some people for waiting a little bit longer. But if we stick to the current weather patterns we've been in, soybeans are definitely looking like a great option.
Well, fantastic information, and again, thanks for coming on Farmgate.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Okay, we'll take a break again. We're back in 2 minutes. Please stay with us.